And so this is EOPS, and it's really 51 years now of equity, hope, and success. So there is an West African Adinkra symbol system, and Adinkra symbols are really proverbial in nature. And so if you, the symbol that's pictured here is called Sankofa. And you'll notice that it is a bird whose beak is facing backwards, whose feet are facing forward. And so the proverb is, it is not taboo to go back and fetch it, meaning that before you move forward, you have to know your past. You have to accept and reconcile your past and learn the lessons from it so that you can find your way clear to move forward. And so that's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to talk about this wonderful program, but really how it started. And I hope that in hearing this, that it encourages you to pick up that mantle and find your lane and do the work that you were put here to do. I believe that every person has a talent, skill, gift, and ability, and that it is yours to give to the world. And when you give it and you excel and you do it well, it will uplift your families, your communities, and humanities. And so I think the example of EOPS and how it came to be is one that has certainly uplifted hundreds of thousands, really millions of students in the state of California. And so when you think about the start of EOPS, you really have to look at the political landscape at that time. So in 1954, the Supreme Court banned school segregation with the Brown versus Board of Education. 1954, and it's not really very long ago. The historic March on Washington in 1963, where Dr. Martin Luther King delivered his I Have a Dream speech. So the country is really in a state of social unrest, very similar to today, right? So we've got young people, people from all walks of life taking to the streets to try to move the nation towards living up to its creed that all men are created equal, men and women, and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then 2 years later, we have the ushering in of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to eliminate attempts to suppress voter registration. So, you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? And so this act was fought for, it was won, and really was stripped a few years back. So the Voting Rights Act was really significant in ensuring that people could actually access polls and have the right to vote. So no literacy tests, no counting jelly beans in a jar, and if you hit the right number, then you can vote. No having to inherit voting, meaning if your father could vote, then you could vote, right? So all of these kind of ridiculous arbitrary rules that were put into place, the Voting Rights Act kind of demolished. And then we had the Poor People's March. A few years later, 1968, right after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his partner in crime, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, organized and led that march. And then in the late 60s, early 70s, we start to see the rise of the Black Power movement. Now, California was really integral in a lot of the things that were happening, right? So we had the Watts Rebellion very early, mid-1960s. A police officer was arresting someone, and got into a scuffle with a pregnant woman who was at the scene and injured her. And that started the Watts Rebellion. I believe there were 30 injuries and or deaths during that rebellion. So it was a pretty significant uprising. In the Central Valley, we see the emergence of the Farm Workers Union with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, right? So throughout the country and even here in California, people were struggling for their human and civil rights. And then in Oakland, just for me, I'm in Sacramento, so right down the road from me, we see the emergence of the Black Panther Party that was founded in 1966. So just south of San Francisco, about 22 miles south of San Francisco, is a community called San Mateo. The College of San Mateo is a beautiful campus. It sits up on a hill. When you stand at the top of that hill, you can go out, and if the day is clear, you can look up to your left and see the Bay Bridge. And if you turn right, and on a clear day, you can see another bridge called the Dumbarton Bridge. And you have this panoramic view of the valley leading all the way 22 miles up into San Francisco, a very beautiful suburban campus, also a very white campus. And so during that time, College of San Mateo served 8,000 students. 94 of the 8,000 were Black students, and those 94 students had a 90% dropout or fail rate. Can you believe that? 90%, meaning they were losing just about all of those students. And so the president at that time was Julio Bortolazzo, and he saw something amiss, saw something that was wrong, and talked to an English instructor named Jean Worth and asked her to come up with some way to intervene to keep these students present and to keep them engaged on campus. And so she created what we knew as the College Readiness Program. The College Readiness Program started with 40 students, 40 African American students. By the end of that year, she'd retained 39 of them. A huge difference, right? By fall of the next year, she had 200 participants. And the following year, she had 300 participants. And although the program was built and centered around African American student success, Asian students started coming, and Latinx students started coming. And so the College Readiness Program kind of became the hub, the place where students felt comfortable, they felt safe, they had faculty and staff that reflected their racial identities and their experiences. And so that program became quite successful. In the following year, in '67, they hired Robert Hoover, who was the first director of that program. And it just continued to increase and grow. And so the college put money into the program. And what they did, and all of this will sound familiar to you as EOPS students, they had extensive outreach and recruitment. So in the Bay Area at that time, most of the Black residents lived in East Palo Alto, which is not just a stone's throw from Stanford University. They went there, they recruited those students, they provided transportation assistance so those students could get to campus, they provided tutoring for students that needed additional academic help, and they insisted that students have and develop a student educational plan. All of that should sound really familiar to you as EOP&S and CARE students. Like any movement, right? Any effort, a lot of it depends on, its survival depends on the leadership in the institution. And so eventually, Julio Bortolazzo left the institution. And the folks that kind of had took issue and had umbrage with those students being present, with the work that was being done in the college readiness program. That kind of negativity began to emerge again, right? Remember, nothing is new under the sun. We're seeing this play out on a national level now. And so the students, the institution began to withdraw its support from the program, and so the students had an uprising. And so I am told that there were people that came from outside of the institution that broke out some windows and did some things that really made the institution come down hard on the students and on the program. And then the campus completely withdrew its support. And so then the program became really dependent upon outside resources to run the program. So during that time, there was also a similar program at San Jose State University. And my understanding is that both of those programs came to the attention of Senator Alfred Alquist, and he's pictured here. Senator Alquist is deceased, but he wrote a Senate Bill 164, which created the EOPS program in all of the community colleges in California. That bill was signed into law by then Governor Ronald Reagan in 1969. And so then you have the establishment and the instituting of EOPS throughout the California community college system. Currently, EOPS is in all 114 colleges, not the 115 college, which is the online college, and we serve just under 100,000 students annually. But if you look back over that 50-year period, we're really talking about millions of students who otherwise may not have accessed college if it were not for extended opportunities programs and services, EOPS, right? And so what we know statistically is that EOPS students tend to have higher grade point averages, they tend to have higher retention rates, and they have higher degree and certificate completion rates than non-EOPS students. And so the program has been around for 51 years because it works. So in addition to EOPS, we see the emergence of CARE, Cooperative Agencies Resources for Education. Blanche Goldstein, who is pictured, was a social worker and a philanthropist, and she began the CARE program at Imperial Valley College in the late 70s. And then just a few years later, it had spread to a dozen community colleges. William Bill Chavez was an advocate, and so he was instrumental in getting AB 3101 authored, which created the CARE program. Teresa Hughes is the assembly member who wrote the bill. So Senator Hughes wrote the bill 3103 that established CARE throughout the California community college system. And so all of these people are deceased. Culturally, I think it's important that you pay respect and honor to those on whose shoulders you stand. These are our social justice warriors. These are the people that made EOPS and CARE possible in the California community college system. And then finally, our newest program is Next Up. That program was created by Senator Carol Liu in conjunction with the John Burton Foundation and CCC EOPS, the California Community Colleges EOPS Association. Senate Bill 1023 was enacted in 2014. It granted 10 community college districts funding to begin what was then CAFES, now Next Up. So our program that serves foster youth who meet the eligibility criteria. And then just a few years later, Senate Bill 12 expanded that to 20 districts. So now we're up to about 56 campuses that have the Next Up program. And so that's kind of the EOPS Care Next Up umbrella. So this is really the critical thing in what EOPS taught us, right? The importance of community. We know that students, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter how much money they have, can achieve if given the proper opportunity and resources. And so the importance of community, the importance of connecting with people who can guide you, who believe in you, who are able to help you either climb over obstacles or bust through them, right? It's really critical to student success. It taught us that if the institution has a will to address an issue, then there is a way, right? And so remember, it was just one person who said, something's not right with the data that we're seeing about student success. What can we do to change that? One person who talked to another person, who talked to another person, and then they just got to work. And lo and behold, 51 years later, we have EOPNS, right? And so if there is a will and there's people who are willing to do that work, we know that we can make changes. We know that students develop self-efficacy. There's the belief that they are college material and that they can achieve and that they can succeed when there are people around who believe in them and who guide them. We know that those students will then develop self-determination. You'll pick your major, right? You'll go to those tutoring sessions. You'll take that extra step to ensure that you can achieve your academic, your career, and your personal goals, right? Because you'll know that you have the ability to do that if you will. Speaking truth to power is a critical part because it's the student story that allows us to challenge the legislator in difficult budget times to ensure that they're prioritizing the EOPS Care and Next Up programs. And so your ability to speak truth to power, to just simply tell your story, is a really important and critical part in ensuring that EOPS Care and Next Up continue to exist for the future generations that need that additional support. The accountability is important. All of you signed a mutual responsibility contract, right? And it tells you exactly what you need to do to remain eligible for the program, and it tells you exactly how the program will support you. And so every year, EOPNS submits budget reports. We submit a program plan so the state knows exactly how that money is being spent. And so the accountability is really important, and it's something that the EOPS program directors love because we want to show everyone that this program works and that our students are worthy of the support that they receive. The EOPS program taught us passion and compassion. It taught us grace. And it taught us to whom much is given, much is required. So all of the support, not just the financial support, but the times that the staff and the faculty have sat with you, have cried with you, have laughed with you, have celebrated with you, have stayed the extra hour or two with you, even though they were supposed to clock out at 5 o'clock in the evening, right? All of that pouring into you, all of that love that is pouring into you, then the expectation is to whom much is given, much is required. And so whatever lane you choose, whatever your major is, there is an expectation that you will pay that love forward, that you will help someone else, that you will support someone else, that you will give back to the program and to the communities in which you live, because that is truly the spirit of EOPS Care and Next Up. So what's the impact? Wow, it changed the system of community college education. they decided that they had to have some kind of matriculation process, which really just speaks to how campuses onboard students, how you complete applications, how you go through college orientation, how you meet with the counselor, develop an ed plan, all of these steps that we know help students be successful. Now, I defy you to find a community college that does not have a tutoring program, but prior to EOPS, it did not exist in the California community college system. EOPS helped shepherd in job placement because the programs that I mentioned had that as an element. It shepherded in ethnic studies programs because once the students were on campus, they really wanted an opportunity to learn about their own cultures and the cultures of other individuals of color. It diversified the workforce, right? Because one of the critical pieces that we knew then and that everyone is admitting now is that students need to go on a campus and see a professor, a staff person, an administrator who looks like them so that they know that they have a place in that institution. And then the statewide initiatives that followed, the Basic Skills Initiative, working with students who weren't quite ready to jump into college level classes, or the Student Success and Support Program, which redefined what matriculation is, for equity. So now we're looking at students who aren't having the success rates as other students and trying to figure out what interventions we can do to bring those success rates up. Guided pathways, right? How do we give the students this clear path rooted in equity to reach their academic and career goals? And finally, the Student Equity and Achievement Program, which rolls up the Basic Skills Program, the Student Success and Support Program, and the Equity Program into one funding stream, right? So that's what we know is true and what we know is possible. And so in many ways, EOPNS, the community college is trying to catch up with the work that EOPS and CARE started about 50 years ago. There is a video on YouTube that was created by Bakersfield College that really celebrated the 40th anniversary of EOPNS, and I encourage and invite you to look at that when you have a moment. It is a beautiful kind of pictorial presentation of the history of EOPNS, CARE, and Next Step. So I'm going to wrap this up by saying this.
Just a sec.
All of us, and you included, we're all links in this great human chain, right? We are connected to the people that came before us, and we connect the people in the past to the people who are coming in the future, right? We're all links in the chain. And so pictured for you are my links. And so if you can see my cursor, Adrian Orozco was the director who was in the EOPS and CARE program when I was a student at College of San Mateo. He remains my mentor, one of my biggest advocates and friend. Ruth Turner is the coordinator who, when I began working in EOPNS as a classified professional, really ground me in Title V, which are the implementing the laws that govern how EOPNS is to be operated and run on the campus. This is my mentee. This is Crystal Duncan, who became the EOPNS program director after I left College of San Mateo, who's now the Dean of Counseling. This is Bo Yoshimura, who was a counselor in our Multicultural Center, a program that I oversaw at College of San Mateo. He was also one of my mentors when I was a student there. Lorena Del Mundo, Lorena Rodriguez I'm sorry, Lorena Gonzalez, who was my colleague. I became the program director. She became a faculty member and is now at Contra Costa College. These are students who came out to see Dolores Huerta. You see that's her hugging Dolores. I love that picture, right? Clarence Louie, who was an adjunct counselor. He retired from EOPS as a full-time counselor at Delta College. This is taking our summer readiness students on a trip to Yosemite. All of these people are connected to EOPNS. Our past president, Omar, and we're receiving a proclamation from the state of California for our 50th anniversary. This is all of us. One day it will be one of you, right? One day one of you will come into the program. One day one of you will take over leadership of that program. It is how EOPS has remained strong throughout the years, because we employ our own. We employ people who understand our students' stories and their journeys. And I commend you on staying the course, even during COVID, during these unusual, uncertain times. Keep your eye on the prize. Keep moving forward, because as Kendrick Lamar says, it's going to be all right. Thank you.